Hi loves, welcome back to the channel Style by C. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today's tutorial will be on how to sew, cut and sew these beautiful shirts. Do subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to share to friends. Give us a thumbs up and watch. Thank you so much. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to do, first thing first, is to mark the full length of your top. Alright, so for this shirt, my full length is going to be 21 inches. I'm going to go ahead and make a real cross. You can decide to use less. It must not be 21, it can be 18, it can be 20, it can be 22, 23. Alright, depend on your height and your bust. So now the next thing to do at this point now is I'm going to go ahead and insert my shoulder measurements. After inserting your shoulder measurements, you also insert your sleeve measurements at this start point area. So the sleeve I'm working with is 10 inches. Note you can decide to work with less. Having done that now, I'm going to come to this point and come down by 1 inch. That is where my sleeve stops. Here. I went ahead to mark 1 inch there. Then my neck width is, so the neck width I'm working with is 2.5 inches. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and mark my 2.5 inches. You can decide to use 3, you can decide to use 2.75. Okay, so from this point now I'm going to be connecting it to 1 inch slope, which is at my sleeve area, the end of the sleeve part. I'll connect the 2 points together. And this is what I have. So at this point now, which is here, I'm going to come down to about 10 to 11 inches. So I'm going to be coming down to 10 inches. So this area is going to be serving as my arm opening. Yeah. So here now, which my arm opening stops, that is where I'm going to go ahead and insert my bust measurements. So my bust measurement is 8.5. I have it here. Then I will go ahead and insert a seam allowance, which is 2 inches. Then from that point, I'm going to be making a curve this way. Alright. Then at this bottom part, this is where I'm going to insert my waist measurement. So my waist measurement is 7.25 plus my seam allowance. Then I'll connect it to this. Having done this now, I'll go ahead and cut this out. So we'll be using this to cut out another piece for the front. So now the next thing to do is we're going to be placing our back piece on top of another folded fabric. Okay, so now it's going to be so this is what I have to do. Just go ahead and arrange it properly. And you should have at least 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches extra before your back piece. Alright, so I have 3.5. Should have at least 3 to 4 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and trim it out. So now this is what we have. Alright, so this is for our back and this is for our front. Now we're going to go ahead with our neck depth. So for our back neck depth, I'm going to be working with 1.5 inches for my neck depth. And I'm going to connect it to my neck width, and this is what I have. I'll go ahead and cut it out. Then for my front, I'm going to notch where this stops. Okay, so this allowance I left now is for my button allowance. All right, so having done that, now I'm going to separate it. Keep this aside. So this is for my front piece. What I have to do is I'm going to go ahead and make, I'm going to iron it first, then make a fold. All right, for my button. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a very good ironing so it's wrapped together. This is going to be for my button allowance. Before I will cut out the neck piece, I'm going to do this first. So guys, this is for my front piece now. I've gone ahead to iron it. That is my button allowance, and this is what I have. Now I'll go ahead and run a stitch on it. Okay, so that's what we're going to go ahead and do. So this for one and this one is for the other. So after running a stitch on the button allowance, the next thing I'm going to go ahead to do is to join both my back shoulder and the front shoulder together. And this is what I have. Okay, the next thing I went ahead to do was to hem my sleeve area. Okay, the bottom of my sleeve, I went ahead to hem it. Now we're going to shape our dress. This is your bust measurement is. So I'm going to be adding about 1.5 inches because I don't want it to be too tight. But if you want yours to be body hug, all you have to do is just use 1 inch to shape it, or use your actual body measurement. Alright. So I'm adding extra 1.25 inches. So let's just say 1 inches. That was the extra I added. Then for my sleeve, I'm also going to be using 1 inch at this point. Now I'm going to connect them together, and this is what we have. Now we're going to go ahead and run a stitch to close it up. The same thing we do to the other side. Alright guys, so when we are done, this is what we have. This is what it looks like. Okay, our crop shirt. Now we are going to be working on the collar area. Okay, so first thing first, you're going to measure what you have around your neck, starting from this point. So I have 19 inches. So I'm going to fold my fabric into two this way, and I'm going to mark 20 inches, 19 inches plus extra 1 inch. Now the next thing to mark is the width of, or the boldness of your collar. So I'm going to be working with 2.5 inches. please note that this is on a fold. The extra 1 inch I used is for seam allowance or stitching allowance at the two ends. And this is what I have. Okay, so if you think this is too big, what you have to do is just use 2 inches, because as I'm saying, it is as if it's a little bit bulky. So I'm trimming half an inch off. So last what I worked with is 2 inches on the fold. So this is what I have now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run a stitch here to hold this place down. Okay, but before then, if I'm stitching on it, getting to a point here, I'm going to fold one part of this material inwards and leave this side to fall out. The same thing I will do to this other side. So guys, after stitching, the next thing I did was to iron my collar, and this is what I have. Now I'm going to be stitching it on this dress, on my shirt. Okay, so I'm going to pick up this part. Remember I told you to fold in one part of it while stitching the inside. So now I'm going to go ahead and run a stitch between the shirt and the collar. Okay, so I'm going to pick this one that is out first and do the stitching. So having done this now, the next thing to do is this. I'm going to pull my collar. This is what it looks like. So please put your collar in this way and go ahead and top stitch on it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now to top stitch at this point. So that's what I'm going to go ahead to do now. I'm going to run a top stitch on it. So this is the final result of what it looks like. For this tutorial, I actually used a thick crepe. So if you're working on yokes, please use a cotton material or a lighter crepe, so it will give you that flancing effect, like it's going to be very light. Thank you so much for sticking by.